You went to BBA.
We're live.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Friday, April 10th, 2026 at 9:05 in the morning. And so we use this half an hour before going to the floor to hear from our legislative intern. Abbott, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Cabot Sales, UVM intern. It's going to be fairly short for me this week, but I'm just going to talk about a couple things, couple bills that they're discussing in Senate Economic Development, starting with H211, Act relating to data brokers. This was introduced by Representative Priestley earlier this week. And now I'm just going to go over some discussion and questions that they had, specifically from Senator Rand Hinsdale, asking if there would be a bigger impact, but there could be a bigger impact on this type of personal data collection and individuals just annually opting out. Just a little bit concerned that the opt-out might not have as big an impact as she would like to see. And the response was from Ryan Krieger that the data broker industry right now most likely won't get completely banned, but there is some legislation in Maryland that is experimenting with banning data being collected for non-essential business practices. But it is too early to tell the full impact of that yet, but there are some places working on that. Another question from Senator Brock as to the disclosures, some concerns about whether or not people are going to know that this takes effect. The disclosures will be on the AG's website and on the data broker's website. Those are the only real concerns that came up in the overall committee sentiment was very positive towards the bill, but they are going to have more discussion. And moving on to H512, event ticketing. They heard from Lauren Wayne, who's with State Theater Presents in Portland, Maine. And she was very positive about this bill. Maine passed LD 913 last year, which is similar, and she spoke very highly of that, saying that it worked. It also has a 10% cap, and it requires upfront pricing information and advanced speculative ticket selling. So that seemed pretty influential in the committee. There was some concern, especially from Senator Chittenden, about the 10% cap being on the original price of the ticket before or after fees. It seems like the 10% would be after fees, but that's just a topic that continues to be discussed in the committee. And Senator Weeks asked a question, just a little bit of pushback about whether resellers could sell tickets to each other back and forth over and over to keep raising the 10%. In the case of Maine, that hasn't really happened yet. And if they face situations like that, they typically refer it to the AG's office. In Vermont, that might not end up being a big deal, but it is something they were talking about. And Lauren Wayne also pointed to EU and UK ticketing legislation. EU doesn't have a price cap, but they do have some policies that focus on clear disclosure and defending against deceptive practice, specifically in ticket selling. And the UK has the 100% price cap, so you can't resell above that. And the legislation in Maine and H512 falls in the middle. And they also heard a couple stories from Vermonters who victims of deceptive ticket reselling practices. And overall, they were largely positive about the bill, but there's going to be more discussion to come there. And that's all I have for this week.
Any questions for Kevin? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Bailey just sent her report and I posted it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I sent it to John.
not a problem. Good morning, Bailey.
Good morning, Bailey Davis, from the North Intern Committee here. So what I went over this week was primarily Senate Bill 325, and that's currently in the House Environment Committee. So I was referred to them. It's, in this time we have, it's very hard to obviously cover everything because there's been like public comment on it as well. But I'm primarily going to cover some of the witnesses that they've called. So first and foremost, Kirsten Sultan and Alex Weinhagen. They're members of the Land Use Review Board. And they've presented some of the changes that they've come under after the passing of Act 250 after Act 250's changes went into effect. And I don't know if you remember, I testified about Act 250 earlier this session. And so a lot of this is in relation to that. There's a typo on the version that you have. It says like council member, it's like a double, I actually did that twice. But basically they testify on the board's authority to determine appropriate criteria for some of those Act 250 regulations. And they testify that legislation should specify the authority's waiver rights. And that's in order to not have lag or build up in terms of the permitting system. The second witness is Samantha Sheehan, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And she primarily discussed road rule, which road rule in Act 325 is the idea that it's trying to restrict sort of long new roads to reduce sprawl. And a lot of people, and I'll get into it a little bit later, she kind of had issue with that. That it's going to cause problems with zoning for local municipalities, and then as we'll get into later, a lot of farmers in rural areas also have a big issue with that. And so in terms of zoning, in Act 250, and I'll get into that later when we talk about the chairperson of Let's Build Homes, Mario Weinberger. He's obviously former mayor of Burlington. He also has some of a similar issue as Samantha Sheehan did, in that in Act 250, there's exemptions to certain areas, served by water and sewer. But people like, Mario Weinberger, for example, argued in his testimony that we should actually just completely get rid of he's supportive expansion of the exemptions to serve basically all areas that are served by water and sewer, municipal water and sewer, as opposed to just some areas. That's related to tier 1, 2, and 3 zoning, particularly tier 1, that fast growth area. Mario Weinberger also called for the repeal of that road rule in the direction of root zone. So root zone stands for residential opportunity overlay for towns, and that should be expansion of that by right. So if you're in that certain area served by municipal water and sewer, you have almost approval by right, and that obviously would spur expansion, which is really the whole argument made by his organization, Let's Build Homes. It's trying to reduce the regulatory oversight and try to curb the demographic crisis in housing production. Right, so I'm going to move on to Sam Lincoln. So Lincoln, this is kind of what I was talking about when it came to agriculture, particularly that road rule where it restricts new, particularly long roads. And that would be a huge issue when it comes to farmers, because obviously farmers typically rely on some of the improvements to rural roadways. And so if there's restrictions to that through that road rule, then it would be, of course, a restriction on their ability to do their work. And I mean, I'm going to open up any questions. I think, I don't know if you guys would also want to hear about my report last week. I know I didn't get a chance to come in and talk about that, but if you guys had any questions about that, I'll open that as well. So
I have a question about this.
yes.
Your report says Vermont has had wind laws on the books. Is that a typo?
So
Or
which section's that in? I think
that's in the second page, that first little paragraph.
I think this is from the report from Samantha Sheehan. What I did was Mario Weinberger. It's from his. I mean, I can upload the PDF as well.
I was just curious what wind laws are.
Yes, that's just from his witness testimony. I mean, I can look into it for sure. More detail. I just try to make like kind of a general overview. I know it's very complicated for the amount of time we have here, but it certainly take me a lot more time, so.
Questions?
Because the Weinberger, let's go home, just talk about the root zones. And that's just there. I think that's just a thing there.
I think it's been talked about by a few different people, but I know it's definitely something that's been in sort of in terms of this area, it's something that's kind of been thrown around, just like common phrase, and that's something that they are kind of advocating for.
Yeah, 325 has a study in it to create root zones that
Who would make zone?
I think the idea is the town creates areas that allow by right housing. It's an overlay in a town, so it's beyond the just Act 250 exemptions. It's basically marrying, yeah.
And I think it has to do with that supportive expansion, it's that expansion of the Act 250 exemptions.
But did I hear that it was still tied to the existence of municipal water and sewer?
Yes, so I mean, under the current, or under the Act 250 exemptions, the original ones, that was one of the, I guess, the free chance to getting that exemption would be, you'd have to be served by municipal water and sewer, but there are places that are served by municipal water and sewer that wouldn't get that exemption.
So Lettsville Homes, they want to extend the exemptions to those areas that do have municipal water and sewer,
So the,
but not any other.
All areas served by municipal water and sewer.
Right, but that is,
Because I think
but that's our criteria.
I think the way it's set up now is that you also have to be recognized as a growth zone
Yeah, as
by your
here,
regional planning
Yes.
commission. And then on top of that, if you're not in a flood zone and you don't have, and you have municipal water and sewer, then you can get the tier 1B and eventually tier 1A. So I can see a situation where they're just not in one of the regional planning commission's growth zones. Even though they have town water and sewer,
Right,
they can't take advantage of tier
right.
1.
And so this would enable those areas expansion. I guess my thinking is, knowing some of these small towns, they don't have municipal water and sewer. So they're lots of their towns that might be sewer housing wouldn't be able to be on zone.
there can be tier 1B for that.
I know, but that's why I was asking about their proposal. It seemed to me, what I was hearing was that it was limited to areas that do have water and sewer, which helps some towns, some places, but
Right.
probably not others.
Yeah, like the thing is, I mean, like you said, there could be tier 1B without water and sewer, but there can be not tier 1B with water and sewer, right? So obviously,
Yeah.
I just expect that from like a kind of arbitrary like zoning.
Just for clearing up, I'm not sure, it sounded like you said that it was the regional planning area that choose what goes in what areas, but the towns submit their plan to regional
Correct.
planning. Regional planning combines all the plans, so the towns are fully
They are, yes, you have to opt in,
Well,
Um,
they're not fully in
choosing.
charge.
correct.
They
based on-
choose, town RPCs collate it, but the LURB then reviews and.
Yeah, if we have a vote like,
But but it's not, nobody else is putting them into these areas, the town has to request.
correct, yes.
That's that these areas are, right.
But the LURB also has to then agree.
Took away most of Killington's. That's well,
Louder, Jonathan.
so in some towns, you're seeing that as the regional plans are submitted, the LURB is sending back with some modifications to areas that have been designated by municipality and the regional planning commission. So people are kind of scratching their heads like, why would a portion of Killington's TIF district be excluded from that? We're just learning as we go, and but that is, so I can see why something like a root zone
Yeah.
allows for an additional layer of municipal decision making and knowing that you're gonna get what you say you want. Which I think is important.
Yeah, and I think the idea of root zones too is to also marry kind of 802 homes program. So it's really also about building code and zoning. So the idea is the state creates a code, the towns adopt it for these root zones, and then certain what fits the state code can then be built by right in those root zones. So for example, all of the designs that are in the 802 homes, missing middle, homes catalog. If that was part of the state code that was adopted, someone could just build it by right in those areas.
Any other questions? Any questions can relate to right to repair now? So I didn't get to come last week. It's,
Speaking about right to repair.
There was a new article,
Yeah, who sent that out?
Gabby.
Oh, I did, yeah.
About John Deere in Colorado.
Yeah, I can pull it up. There's a lawsuit
or, yeah,
and
It's pretty interesting.
yeah, when I did my report last week, yeah. I know there was, what I talked about in front of me, but I know I talked about was, there was, obviously certain groups that are gonna challenge, those laws, but there hasn't been, there's been lawsuits based on other things that could have been used to challenge those as well. So I think maybe that's what that's about. So-
Yeah, it came out on Wednesday, the article about the lawsuit.
Can you send that at the?
Oh, yeah.
Mention it to him. Yeah. need to find it for that.
It's a cabinet page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It did seem like, so when we were considering the bill, we had a lot of discussion about my introduction to the term manufacturer. And I can see that servicing versus remanufacturing being an area of significant disagreement between the parties about whether we're just this or they went, I can imagine the OEMs feeling like, oh, that's remanufacturing, like, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, just you could, because, I mean, if you, let's just say like you had a tractor, right, and you had to like completely rebuild the engine, you can see that it's manufacturing as opposed to repairing. So, that's one of the big things. I think there's the specific Colorado law that targets agriculture. But yeah, and I mean, I went on like kind of like a tangent, the end of it, but basically, even though those laws technically protect, again, like for right to repair, there's still ways that companies can still like manufacture things in ways that can't be repaired. But it doesn't violate right to repair, that's just how they made it. So as long as they provide you with the parts that technically can repair it, even though you can't necessarily repair it yourself, it still technically doesn't violate the. Any other questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Bailey, thank you, Cabot.
These guys are only with us for a couple of weeks.
Right.
So.
I'll still be around. Come up.
Okay. You're always welcome.
That's all right.
Okay, so, we're on the floor, I think. It's
Now,
9:30. I think it's estimated we'll be out there till 11. We have Jay Ramsey coming in at 11 to talk to us. About a couple of different things.
Yeah.
And so, not sure yet what we have or if we have anything for this afternoon. We'll know more. We'll come back at 11. So, any questions? Okay, so we're on the floor at 9:30, back here at 11 or whenever the floor well, 11 for sure, if we get off the floor before 11, you will be back in here for 11, Jay's scheduled for 11, so. If it's after 11, come right back here, get going. If we have to eat into the lunch hour, then we can take a longer lunch hour, something, we're doing anything besides it.